Well, welcome to our webinar today. And the content we'll be sharing HubSpot for associations from fragmented to unified. Of course, welcome to everyone. Just give you a little bit of background about what we're here to talk about today is most associations have invested heavily in AMS systems, but members still feel disconnected. Engagement is lacking and growth is harder than ever. So today we're going to share some fresh insights from over 250 association conversations, highlighting how leading teams are solving their challenges with HubSpot, and show you real world examples of transforming member experience through integrated events. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to share a few of our hosts we have here today, including one of our pinch hitter hosts. So we appreciate him very much for being here. So we're going to move on to this next slide. So first and foremost, I am Noah Burke, co-CEO of Aptitude 8. We are a HubSpot Elite Solutions Partner, #2 Global Solutions Partner of the Year, and HubSpot's leading technical consultancy. I'm joined by my other hosts, and I will give a hint. One of them, Ben, unfortunately had a family emergency he had to run to. Luckily, we have filling in Dax from the Happily team, who will be taking over his role. So his picture's not up there, but happy to have him here with us today. I'll let each of my co-hosts share a little bit about themselves, background, and who they are. So Clay, we'll start with you.
Hey, I'm Clay Ostrom. I'm the founder of Map and Fire, and we are a customer research and brand strategy agency. And we helped the group here with some of the research and insights that we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, Clay. All right, Dax, I'll pass it to you.
Perfect. I'm Dax, co-founder of Happily, Chief Care Officer. We are a HubSpot app studio focused mainly on quoting and now really focused on events and bringing that in-person experience to back to the campfire, making sure everyone can really understand and connect with humans in a great way.
And our honored guest today, Maria, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for invitation back to here. I am the head of growth and marketing manager of the Swiss Startup Association, and we are the umbrella organization for the Swiss startups, representing over 2,000 startups in Switzerland. And our goal is to improve the conditions for them in Switzerland.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate the introductions, team. We're going to dive right in. We're first going to start off with the agenda of what we have today and what you can expect. So we got a really good lineup for all of you. Like I mentioned at the top, is we're going to dig into new research from over 250 associations, what's working, what's not working, and where leaders are running into friction. We're also going to hear directly from Maria on what this looks like in real life and how she's leveraged these tools to improve the engagement. After that, we'll walk through how tools like HubSpot and Hapily are really helping teams solve these challenges. And finally, we're going to wrap up with real world event use case, plus some time for Q&A and takeaways at the end. So, let's dig right in. Let's start with what the research tells us and why it matters. So, Clay, I'm going to start with you here. Your team spoke with over 250 associations. First of all, that's a lot. So what stood out to you right away from these conversations?
Yeah, I think just going off the title of this webinar, the big theme that we saw that really stood out right away was just that fragmentation around the tech stack. You can see a couple of these top pain points around just the sheer number of systems that they're using, and just the way that they integrate together is just a huge issue. We think about an AMS, association management software, as being this kind of central hub for associations, but we didn't really see, first of all, we didn't see a big dominant player in that space, nobody having more than 10% market share. But in addition to that, when we think about all the other tools that make up the tech stack, and that's CRM, learning management, events, volunteer management, community engagement, these associations are really using specialized tools for basically all of these things. For community management, for example, we saw 44% using Facebook groups. So again, this really feeds into this big challenge of fragmentation of data, not being able to get a clear view of how everybody's engaging, and then ultimately being able to support your members appropriately.
It's really interesting, Clay, you kind of shared that because that kind of matches with what we see too, especially when associations don't have that real-time engagement data. And the reason why is because an outreach tends to fall flat. It just may be generic messaging, generic communication, not timely, and unfortunately, it doesn't do you any favors, especially in the day and age we live nowadays, where people expect timely, personalized communications and knowing everything about them. Which kind of leads us straight into the next slide here with really what's holding associations back. And I think you kind of alluded to some of it. And I think from my perspective, one of the key points and one of the things that really caught my eye was 47% cited member satisfaction as their biggest challenge. Why do you think this is such a pervasive challenge all these associations are experiencing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's sort of two sides to this. So membership dues, we saw membership dues as being the top revenue driver for associations with 43%. So obviously understanding your members, keeping them engaged is critical, right? That's critical to the business and the growth of the business. In terms of the actual engagement with them, I think we saw sort of two parts of the issue around that. And so one is, again, data, the struggle of getting data, like you were saying, like we're used to a world now where we can do real-time engagement, we can do personalization, and there's just all kinds of challenges with that when you've got these disparate systems that don't communicate well. And then the other part, we saw that, events are a huge part of association engagement. And what a lot of associations struggle with is what's happening in between those events and making sure that members feel like they're getting enough value from their dues to keep their membership going. We heard from one leader who runs an association for Jewish studies, and he was talking about the fact that they've got this one big annual event that they do, like a conference every year. You have to be a member to attend, and they would see this spike of membership happening right before the big event, and then people churning and leaving afterwards. So again, there's just this challenge of sharing information, making sure people know that there's other content available, whether that's training information or other things that associations provide. But that is a big problem of just making sure members feel like they're getting enough out of their membership.
And I would say the top three that we see here right now are kind of all interrelated. Member satisfaction directly impacts member retention and member growth. And then because you don't have the member retention, member growth, now you got to go do new member acquisition.
Yeah.
And it's kind of all feeding on each other and causing these challenges. And of course, we're going to get into what are some of the other challenges holding associations back. But from really, Clay, what you're saying here, I mean, really the other issues are probably the leading cause of the primary ones that we see on top. Because when associations don't have real-time engagement data, their outreach will fall flat. And that leads directly into the retention issue, which is then saying associations then have to go out and try and find more members to make up the difference. And it's this cycle they're in constantly. So when we look at this next slide we have here about what's holding associations back, this kind of alludes to what we were just talking about. And fragmentation. It talks about we have no dominant AMS. Like these are issues that we currently have across the board. Poor visibility, manual workflows. I mean, if you're not even directly able to personalize that communication, you're manually doing these things, which requires a lot of time. It's slow. All of a sudden, no one has time to do anything else. And then, of course, I think we can all respect this. Change is hard. And oftentimes leadership will resist change when it comes to this. But Maria, I kind of want to ask you these questions and really, after kind of Clay pointing this out, you've kind of dealt with some of these experiences yourself. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your experiences as a leader inside an association, some of the challenges you've had as well.
Yeah, in a certain way glad to see those numbers and these research partners. I don't feel that alone. And yeah, it resonates a lot here at the association, what you're bringing, especially in our case, because we are handling with startups and they change their goals, their needs very often. So we can to keep this data up to date. And it's quite hard for us, hard work. In our case, more specifically, because we are a non-profit organization, so we count on volunteers to organize events and our database in general, and also to help us to grow the community. So we have to go through those data and try to customize them in certain way, and any of them can use their own tools if you don't have any alternative. And it's quite hard to keep everything up to date. And also I said that we would like to improve the conditions for startups. And then for that, events in our case plays a big role, because they serve as a service, because we deliver educational sessions, networking opportunities for them through the events, but also from the marketing perspective, also as lead generation and so on, and also a way to keep them engaged with our community. And then it's quite hard to keep everything operating well. And those issues that you are representing here today, it's quite related to what we experienced there.
There's sometimes that sense of, oh, I'm not alone. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this right now, they're feeling some comfort from both what you said, Clay, and also what you're saying, Maria, right now, is you guys are all kind of in this together, and the challenges across the board, and they're compounding. It's almost like a spoken wheel, and each one of these compounds the challenge an association has. And I think, Clay, from your perspective, really, would you say the need for flexible member first systems is paramount at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it brings to mind another quote or another mention we had from one of the associations we talked with, where they talked about how some of the older demos in their association struggled with, engaging with certain tools. So yeah, it really is a case where it can't just kind of be a one size fits all for everybody. I think you've got to deal with the fact that you've got, some of these associations have been around a long time. You've got legacy members who've been using it a long time, but you're also trying to bring in a new generation. And everybody's kind of got different perspectives and needs, for sure.
Understood. And as we kind of move into this next slide here, and I think this is kind of what you were alluding to a little bit earlier here. But Clay, how does fragmentation really play out day to day for staff and members? And some insights you saw here in terms of the challenges.
Yeah, again, another quote. This was from a woman who's in a leadership position where they have an association around pharmacists, and she put it very simply, which is to say, we need better access to data to help guide our strategy. It's basically this idea of, we want to make recommendations, we want to improve things, but if we can't even understand our own data and we can't understand our own members clearly, how can we even convince leadership who may be dragging their feet a little bit on change to invest in something new? So it's a very, like you said, it's like a self-feeding issue of, we don't have the data, we can't make decisions, but we can't improve things if we don't have the data. So it really goes in a circle.
It continues to feed itself. And then all of a sudden we have additional issues. I mean, let's just talk about the admin burden if we don't have that data and trying to put all this together. I'm sure, Maria, you'll talk a little bit more about this as well. And it goes back to the personalization, retention, slow follow-up, or the organization just has poor visibility into what's really going on. And this is really what we want to talk about solving. And when we think about solving, and again, we have Dax from Hapily here, which we'll get to in a moment, but solving with HubSpot plus Hapily as we move into the next slide here. And so we've really kind of talked about some of the challenges, and thank you again, Clay, for bringing up, and Maria, thank you for giving the audience your experience of what the struggle feels like inside an association. Because now I want to shift gears and talking about how we solve for it. What are those solutions going to look like? And this is where HubSpot plus tools like Hapily really start to change the game for associations. And one of the things that I want to do as we get into this, and again, audience, I do appreciate Dax being here. He's a last minute pinch hitter for us. But Dax, one of the things I like to do is to jump in here and talk about how we're helping associations go from disconnected to unified. And as we're doing that, really shifting teams how we're solving for this. So Dax, what are you seeing from your side? And maybe kind of start a little bit about what the HubSpot piece is and how associations are winning with HubSpot. And we're going to dive into how events fit in.
So when you're leveraging a single source of truth for everything, 'cause right now, when you're running an event, you've got not only people that are involved in your standard processes and standard systems, you've got a lot of external people as well. You've got people that don't even have any idea what CRM you're using. They just know they expect their check. They want to know some numbers. They need some data on how many people are going to be there, and a ton of these things. Like, it's almost obviously fostering a disconnected and fragmented sense of where you've got spreadsheets and papers, and did the printer kind of get the printer badges yet? All these things that happen where you lose track of what you're really trying to do, which is make people connect. And having HubSpot as that source of truth, not only for the data of who's coming, who's RSVP'd, what their dietary restrictions are, all the information, having that native in one place so that everyone can see it and reference it is kind of the key. What we really wanted to do with Event Hapily, and having that set inside, again, of HubSpot, but where HubSpot has its powerful place of not only storing this data in a meaningful way, but being able to action upon it, and doing that in an automated and scalable fashion where I don't have to redo setting up emails for this upcoming event. I don't have to redo all the confirmations and redo all of the checklists and make new lists and things like that. So when you have that combined with a lot of the specialties that are able to build on top of HubSpot, such as the member portals and the reporting that comes out of the box, it's almost a set it and forget it, but it's a set it and kind of check it out after a little bit, because scalable processes and processes in general, what are aligned here with the marrying of Event Hapily and HubSpot together.
And I think that's all, and what you see up here, audience, is we're looking through kind of how HubSpot helps associations win. It all goes back to the initial challenge about what's holding associations back. And that goes that retention issue. That goes back to the communication issue. That goes back to the personalization issue. So when we think of HubSpot having retention automation using behavioral triggers, did they go to this event? Did they sign up for XYZ? Did they read this particular newsletter? That's all keys that you can do in something like HubSpot. That personalized engagement based upon their role, their experience, what they're most interested in. As Dax just alluded to, data all in one place, your central source of truth, so that you can effectively market. Workflows that you have lead scoring, and also HubSpot has this concept of health scores as well that you can see, are they even participating? So you can identify we may have churn issues with particular members prior to churning. HubSpot has this concept of member portals because we want to continually deliver values. And then for the association themselves, real-time reporting. How many people are signing up for the events? How many vendors do we have coming? How many individuals are repeat versus not? There's all this type of reporting that's going to help the association win ultimately in the end. And this is probably one of the big ones on the next slide, and really where events fit in, because this is the moneymaker for a lot of associations is their events. Clay just gave a good example how an association, they saw everyone sign up to get to the event and then sign off afterwards. We want to make sure they stay throughout that given year. And they're really the most important engagement of all. But without integrations, without having all this data together, it's really sometimes hard to prove ROI. Well, how much ROI do we get from all that promotion effort we did? And Dax, from your perspective here, where do you see associations leveraging events to solve some of these challenges that we have?
Well, it's about the mysterious person that signed up for your association. They're a fit in your industry, and they understand you guys are of the same ilk. But what do they really want? What do they really like? And when you have events, you can't dodge. If you're running your event correctly, which is kind of a different story and a different conversation of how to actually interact and entertain your guests, right? Where they're engaged and not in the corner somewhere. When you have those associations and you're doing this and you're doing these events, you really get to understand who the people are. That data will mirror that as well. Like, how many times are they going? Are people going to one event and churning, or are they going to a couple of events? They're just trying to get some drinks or some food. But just understanding that and marketing to them as such. Marketing, when I say communicating, when you speak to people when they've registered for the first time event, you want to make sure that they have a here's what to expect. The person that's been to every single event every single week doesn't need that email. They know what to expect. They're more of a champion, and you can speak to them as a champion, as a white knight, as a unicorn, and be like, hey, got any friends? Want to bring anybody to this? You've been to every single one. You must be having a good time. So having all of that when you start your registration process to understand how you can really tap in and understand who's a part of your organization, who is in your family. That is an important piece in HubSpot with that data, and having Event Happily with your registration processes allows for that. And also, hey, only members can register for this one, but this one is an open event. So you can do both of those things where you can look for new members and also really engage current members, understand what's on their mind, what problems or challenges they're having in their kind of association of their kind of daily life. But again, you can have your easy events here, and a lot of people that we're working with currently that are in the association space are doing small little get-togethers, small little happy hours, but also attending trade shows. And that's where that ROI really comes in. Am I sending people on vacation, or am I actually going and trying to connect? And what does that connection look like? What does the data tell me their participation in this? And then later on, more signups, more deals, or more kind of engagements that you have, better sponsors. All of this, again, is where this really fits in. And without this, you're dealing with paper, you're dealing with a couple spreadsheets that some people can or can't have. And it's lost. You don't want this to be the work. The work is really what is the engaging with people. It needs to be the work, not trying to figure out all these things, right? Not trying to figure out all these systems where the gears fit in.
Yeah, and I think especially if you think about like HubSpot plus Happily and Happily events, I think in this particular piece is kind of the missing piece that we have in HubSpot for associations, and we'll get into what this actually looks like inside HubSpot in the next few slides here. We're going through some demos that Dax will be able to share, what to expect, what this looks like, because it's not just having the central repository of all this information in your source of truth, it's being able to be actionable, ultimately in the end, full visibility. Whether you're producing an event or participating at an event, Event Happily is able to help understand your audience as well as help understand what the ROI is going to be. So let's actually transition, because I think this is going to be something a lot of the attendees are interested in seeing, is what does like Events Happily look like? So the next few slides we're going to go through here is really going to be walking through this. And Dax, maybe you can kind of give a high level overview of these screenshots we have here. What are people looking at? And what can they expect from this tool?
Event Happily leverages the flexibility of HubSpot. When you install our app, we're going to give you some objects that will represent truly the event space. Your event object, which is your event, sessions to allow you to have different breakouts or different multiple day events or anything like that, as well as the registrant object, which is the most powerful, which is the instance of a contact attending an event. With that data, with that data model allows you to build really, really powerful reports and visibility on who's going where, how effective are your landing pages or your marketing for that event by seeing registrations over time. Are you actually getting revenue from these events? Or again, are you just blowing money, which you don't want to do? You want to make sure you can see how much revenue is coming in, and then you can start to calculate against your expenses. You can see your net revenue, your net ROI, your influence pipeline. You can get as granular as you like because you have the data set in the way possible. And everything with Event Happily is built native. This isn't an external software. This isn't anything that you would need to do. You're going to be able to really run and see this like a dashboard, just like you're seeing here, of how everything's going. Like, how are we doing? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Where should we have our next event? What does the data say for its ability to see our registration?
Dax, I think one of the next slides we have here is probably another really good example of which we talked about, like the expenses and this type of data. Kind of talk a little bit about what people are looking at here as well.
Expenses usually live in a spreadsheet. They usually live in somebody's pocket in a washing machine of an invoice that they forgot, or a receipt they forgot to write down. This is one of the major disconnects of having that, but it is case in point when you do have your expenses, again, managed inside of HubSpot where everyone can see, everyone can adjust, everyone can keep track. You have to have also the revenue associated to that event. And one of our pieces with Event Happily is a workflow action in HubSpot language that automatically attributes deals to the event based upon your parameters, how far you want to look back. If you want to do a look back period of a year or just last month, do you want to attribute revenue from deals to the first event they went to, or maybe the most recent event they went to, or maybe every event if you're just looking for influence, right? Are you directionally going the right way with your events? So having expenses in HubSpot and seeing your ROI and your transactions inside of HubSpot, Event Happily puts that together in one cohesive thing so that you can look at an event, see your expenses, see the attributed deal revenue. Did you make money? Did you lose money? Are we directionally going in the right path? All of that is what's really game changing for people that are currently having sales call in to
Yeah.
marketing person and say, hey, did that guy close? Did that gal convert? They went to this event. Are you sure? I think they did. Like this, all of this goes away, right? Again, the work starts to shift into what's important, which is connecting.
And I think for association, especially as we look onto this next slide here, and this is where I think Maria has probably the most fun because now she can build lists, very highly personalized lists based upon event attendees, based upon whatever things happened before, that personalization to be able to increase that member retention. And this is of course just an example here that we have of building out a list based upon all those contacts associated with that particular event. But Dax, how would you kind of allude to this, like as one of the more powerful reasons why Event Happily is so important here?
When you have granular data of not only just a contact that has attended an event, but the number of contacts that or number of events that a contact has attended, now you're really understanding your effectiveness for your events. Of course, you're going to be able to build lists based on who registered, who attended, or if you're attending a trade show, how many event leads that you got from a given event. Seeing that charted over time is something that's never really been able to be seen based upon the idealistic leaving everything on the contact. Having the registrant object and having that tied to the contact gives you this extra layer of reporting and visibility on how everything can go. And of course, with HubSpot lists, you can associate them to campaigns. So if you're running, maybe if you have Salesforce involved, or if you have any other thing that is tied to tied to campaigns, you can have all of that kind of set as well. So lists in HubSpot are so powerful. You can easily jump them into a report, but out of the box, you're going to be able to see who attended, who registered, who can I reach out that missed out and did not attend. All of that again with a couple of places within time of HubSpot, and that's what makes it the best.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So I want to move on to the next slide because this is really about Maria's story here, kind of before what you experienced. And I know we joked around earlier that you felt a little better about seeing all those stats, Maria. You're not alone in this. Obviously, a lot of people listening to today are feeling the same thing that you had felt before you obviously got involved and purchased HubSpot and Happily. So I'm going to pass the mic to you and kind of share a little more about your story.
Yeah, I can just like share a little bit of our experience here, especially with when it comes to events management, because as I mentioned, it's an important role. We host around 100 events per year and all across Switzerland. So we handle with different regions, which speaks different language. And we are counting on volunteers there. And then they were helping us to host those events, also manage the attendance information, so we get from them this data if it were there, even feedback sometimes because it was not that organized. And we were trying also to use tools that was more commonly used in different regions, and some of them were preventing us to receive more registration because even the availability here in Switzerland is not that big, and then we have or they are, but they are not connected with other tools, for example, or not easy to connect. And some was not receiving Swiss francs, for example. So we have, in certain case, we had to use PayPal to register for our event. We know it's not everyone who has an account there. And then all the fragmented tools was complicating a lot our events management. We could also see that it was really hard to personalize those events for regions. And also we have different industry sectors and needs. And sometimes we were organizing events with similar topics in different regions because we couldn't see the big picture of our organization. So we were experiencing a lot of manual work as well, because then once we had it, we have to find ways to cluster those data. So exporting a lot of reports and also adding information manually to spreadsheets. So that's just a little bit of some challenge that we were facing before.
Yeah, I would say that's just a little bit. Not that many challenges. I'm not sure why you had such a challenge there overall. But I think you kind of summed up what the experience of a lot of associations are. And the challenge. I mean, 100 events is a lot of work, and then trying to manage it, doing it manually. lacking the personalization. I mean, you're just leaving opportunity on the table, both from a member experience perspective, all the way through the overall effectiveness of the event to the value that these members are getting. So, now that we've kind of said what the challenge was before, let's kind of go into what happened afterwards. Like, what did you see? Like, what's your story like after you got all this going?
New life. So
I like that. We have that as the headline in future: new life, more life.
well, it's like being able to see everything in one tool is already amazing. Let's say this really because then now we can easily filter things. We can also have more accurate information because sometimes like even like attendance rate. We were with a representative in a location and then sometimes they meet someone or they haven't checked. Sometimes they have printed lists with those names. So in the checking, it was also complicated. So now being able to trust in our data and having everything integrated is already amazing. But the one thing that I really, really enjoy is the possibility of personalized. So we have a very specific case, let's say this way, and then being able to personalize it according to our needs as an organization, it's really wonderful. And yeah, and the automation, it's we are getting into that now, and this will be super helpful because now being able to also create tasks for ourselves, reminders, and like reaching out to them with the right information, pre and post event is incredible.
One thing I tend to talk about with our clients and just people in general is the force multiplier effect. Is it all of a sudden takes this team of yours and just makes you and everyone so much more productive. It looks as if you just hired all these people, but in reality, you're just leveraging technology in such a way that you're able to get so much more done with the pretty much exact same resources you have now, which is such an exciting place to be in. And then you get to look like the hero at your association, which is even cooler. Like, based on what you heard from Maria's story, like, does this align with kind of what you saw in the research as well, both the challenges as well as, people who had the opportunity to solve it?
Yeah, absolutely. When Maria was talking about the sort of the manual effort of importing, exporting data between systems, that was one of the top challenges we saw. One of the biggest manual processes, 46% of associations dealing with just doing importing and exporting endless times over, which is such a recipe for, data that's out of sync and just errors in data. And yeah, I think everything Maria talked about, again, this idea of everybody's together in this. I think these are very, very common issues. And luckily, you all are offering some tools and services to help make life a little better.
Well, nothing worse than uploading that list and next thing you know, something was incorrect. Nothing that added up correctly, and everyone's getting this random email, and well, who is this person? It's not just the actual effort of doing it; it's the errors that can happen in doing it. And the double checking.
And I was just going to say, I think your point about how this frees up time to do higher level tasks, it's like it frees you up to be able to do more valuable things in your organization, I think is so key. And being able to grow without necessarily increasing headcount is, I think, something on everybody's mind right now.
100% agree with that. So Maria, thank you so much for sharing your story. And again, Clay and Dax, thank you so much as well. We're going to move into our questions Q&A section here. So if anyone has any questions from the audience, feel free to go ahead and add that in. So one of the questions we have is, how long does it take to implement something like this from start to finish? I think there's kind of two parts to this question. One is just HubSpot in general. The other piece is on Hapily. I would say from my perspective, Maria, I'd also love to hear from yours and say your example as well. It depends. It really, really depends upon what are
Good
we
answer.
implementing. Yes. I know you all want me to be like, oh yeah, 30 days. But no, it really ultimately depends upon the size of the association, what you're trying to accomplish, the number of events that you're doing, where is your data currently being stored, what AMS are you currently leveraging at this moment in time, how does this all come through an integration? So what I tend to talk about with individuals, and there's this really great book, How Big Things Get Done, is the number one thing we need to go back to is the why. Make sure you start with the why of why we're doing this implementation in the first place and what we're trying to solve for. And then the planning phase, actually understanding, okay, before we just start slicing and dicing, putting things together, are we actually going to make sure this is correct, on time, and on budget for deployment for the organization? And it's a very thoughtful process you want to go through. So always start with the why. And the second thing is there's a concept called the planning fallacy by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. People tend to underestimate the level of effort and overestimate their own capabilities. And so you want to be honest with yourself about what you're trying to do before just diving head into it, because otherwise you can miss out those expectations. So I would say to start with the why, understand the different systems you're integrating and the reasons behind those, what type of data you want to move in. You could do this within a month to a few months. Other associations can take 6 to 12. It really just depends upon your scenario. And of course, if you have questions, my team from Aptitude would be happy to help you. That's more from the HubSpot side of things. But Dax, I kind of want to ask you that question. Maria, I'd love for you to show your experience.
Depends is pretty much the best answer. We have a standard onboarding that's between 2 and 3 weeks, but it is about, hey, if you're looking to reinvent the wheel, or you have a lot of specialty with your registrations, you have multiple registration flows and processes, event types, attending, it can go very far, and that's why a team like us today is there to really go and extend the application based upon the needs of the association. But depends is pretty much the good answer. But fortunately, as much us at Happily, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of different setups and events. So we'll be pleasantly surprised if there's something that we've never seen before. I won't count it out. There's a non-zero chance, but it's a very straightforward process of how to connect. And that why is really important. Like, what do you really want to get out of this? Is this more enrollments? Is this visibility? Is this the reporting? Is it the ROI? That's where we like to start and really try to contain that into that first rollout.
Perfect. And Maria, tell us about your experience.
Yeah, if unfortunately I cannot share a number specifically, it takes 1 or 2 or 3 months because we did it in a very fragmented way, because we have to handle with what we have and then try to make the best out of it and then improve a little bit more. So we started by implementing HubSpot from scratch. So it took a while, and just with a few information, then we add some more, and then now we are integrating with Happy as well. So I can't even say one number, like it took 6 months or a year from us, because we were doing it over the time.
And that's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to start with, the main tool itself and work on your integrations and then start adding tools to it as time goes on. So I think that's probably a refreshing answer for our audience to hear. And so we have time for about another question or two here that we have coming up. What if your AMS has features we still like? Can we still use it alongside HubSpot? Yes, absolutely. There are things inside your AMS that HubSpot is not necessarily designed to do. Take the ledger, for example, some of the accounting pieces as well. There's also oftentimes there's other items and capabilities inside your AMS that you still tend to use. So what we focus on is thinking about the integration. You got to understand what you want the AMS to do for you versus what you want HubSpot to do for you. A lot of these items can be moved into HubSpot, but oftentimes the association, they don't want to disrupt the entire organization, will still maintain their AMS. But maybe Maria, you can kind of talk about your own experience here as well.
We are really trying to migrate everything we can to
You're not the only one.
So yeah, the events one was one of the last ones, because we were using so many other platforms that was hard to find one that would integrate it also to HubSpot here. And now we are in that point that we are trying to, just so that there is nothing that we really would like to keep in the old one.
Yeah, and oftentimes that note you may build out. We're doing it with a lot of associations right now, which is if HubSpot can't necessarily do something, there's generally a point solution that can handle that particular need that AMS was doing for that association that we're able to evaluate for you to build out everything. So you have one central repository, one central source of truth of your data. And so it just requires evaluating how your association operates primarily, and then be able to come back to you and say, this is the best mechanism. Here's how you could do it all in one, or here's what you may want to keep in what you have. Awesome. I think we have time for one more. We're using an AMS right now that doesn't integrate well with anything. Well, welcome to all AMS. You don't have to feel so bad, hence the challenges that we had earlier. How do we transition, or how do we start transitioning to a more connected system without ripping everything out? So from our perspective, we don't just like to start going ahead and slicing and dicing. That's not the best way of doing things. You really have to evaluate what you want. That's why I say you start with the why. Why are we doing this in the first place? What are the outcomes that we're looking for? That's your North Star. That's your guiding light. That's going to dictate our recommendations as you continue down this pathway. A lot of association software out there. I mean, some of this stuff's been around for a very, very long time, and it does have trouble integrating with other applications. If it's not possible to integrate, at that point, you have a couple of different solutions. We can see how much of this we can simply pull out. There may be some other mechanisms that we can do to, let's say, pull the data in where you still have some sort of sync going on. It may not be a full integration. It may be something daily. But one of the recommendations I really have is, going through almost an audit of your existing systems. How are they currently being used now? What team members are using what's holding back them in the process? What's holding back your numbers from achieving those? Again, that why scenario. And then we can put together a game plan around how do we best want to transition out of that AMS, either into a new software technology stack like HubSpot, or it may be even a bigger conversation like what does that tech stack actually need to look like for you moving forward, because what you currently have right now isn't doing the trick. Based upon your transition, Maria, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear from you as well, as you ripped out like your kind of as you're going down this path. Any kind of additional comments or thoughts you have here as well?
Yeah, like it's good if you can plan as much as possible ahead, because then when you start this transition, it can get quite tricky because then you have to handle with one and another. It's still different platforms, and can seem like it is one more platform to handle it. So it's good when you can plan in a sense that it will cover a part of your process clearly, and then move forward to the next one. So when you have this planning in stages, it is quite helpful.
And planning is doing. I want to emphasize that. Oftentimes people say, well, you're just still planning. No, that is part of the doing process. In fact, I would argue it's the most important part of the doing process. As you've all heard, measure twice, count once. I highly recommend you keep that going. So that being said, we're going to wrap it up for today. I do want to reference, and I want to just thank my co-host today. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Clay. And Dax, thank you so much for pinch hitting for us today and stepping in and helping us do this presentation and talk today. We will be sending out our research paper post today's event in a follow-up email. So you're going to have all the research the Clay and team have done. It is fun stuff. Like you're just going to love going through. You may have an executive on your team, someone else who's like, hey, what's in here? Maybe you're trying to back up why you're recommending A, B, C, or D. You now have the experience from several other 100 associations that you can do. If you'd like to see how Aptitude 8 and our partners like Hapily can help your association unifying systems and member experiences, please feel free to reach out to us. Visit us at aptitude8.com. Happy to chat. And then Dax, I'll let you kind of give a quick plug in for events Happily.
Yeah, Event Happily is your native HubSpot solution. So if you're running events, either for you hosting them or attending, Event Happily has what you need from registration, check-in, QR code, scan-ins, all the fun stuff. So that, again, you guys can worry about connecting. And that's the best thing that we could all spend our time doing, like we did today on this webinar.
And Maria, I'm sure a lot of people will be like, I need to talk to Maria. She has, she's been through this. How do people get in contact with you as well?
You can connect with me via LinkedIn or just reach out via email as well. Also, if you're planning to invest in Swiss startups, feel free to reach out.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, audience, attendees. Really appreciate you all joining us today. Thank you to my co-host for participating, and enjoy. Take care.